Ace Bodyguard Purple Jade encounters the worst traversing in history. At the beginning, my father was wrongly killed, my mother was infuriated, and my family's property was taken over by the powerful officials of the Marquis' mansion, leaving behind a 2-year-old younger brother who was starving for food. Fortunately, her own space is still there, but unfortunately only 10 acres of dried fish pond, 2 multifunctional agricultural machines, 2 villas, and an 800 square meter steel cast basement remain. As your Marquis' mansion wields immense power, I will move all your assets into the space. Cloth, embroidery, fur, ready-to-wear clothing, shoes, all collected, medicinal herbs, grains, pastries, chicken, duck, fish and meat, all collected, collect all kinds of groceries, porcelain, jade, precious calligraphy and painting. Where it passes, like locusts passing through without leaving a single shell. After emptying the enemy's treasury of millions of taels of gold and silver treasures and exposing the true face of their rebellion, they fled. When natural disasters strike, facing floods, snowstorms, and raging wolves, Purple Jade can dominate and ensure safety. Keywords of the novel. After emptying the enemy's warehouse, carrying supplies to pass the disaster year without a pop-up window. After emptying the enemy's warehouse, carrying supplies to pass the disaster year. Download the complete text. After emptying the enemy's warehouse, carrying supplies to pass the disaster year. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Welcome collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The worst beginning in history. The rustling autumn wind blows, and the withered yellow leaves return to the earth, gradually increasing the coolness. The sunset slants through the void, and dust dances in the air. The skinny spider was busy repairing the tattered web, and the cool ghost house had a rare warmth and light. Ah! It's just. It's safe when you come. Ziyu, who sighed 888 times, struggled to get up from the messy haystack, enduring weakness and hunger, and leaned against the broken wall of Chinren. Across from her were bodies wrapped in 2 rolls of straw mats, with one exposed foot covered in dried blood and emitting a foul odor. There is a simple stove made of stones in the corner, with half a smoking jar, and a small group of people pouting their buttocks and vigorously blowing on the fire. A dilapidated courtyard overgrown with weeds, with a newly stepped road, the outer courtyard wall collapsed, and there was no sound of people. Hey, thinking of her outstanding bodyguard, she unexpectedly came to this inexplicable time and space after sacrificing herself for the country. In the 28th year of Tianqing in Baiyun Kingdom. Yundu, what kind of ghost place is this? A dynasty that has never appeared in official history or unofficial history can hardly exist in another time and space. At the beginning, my father was wrongly killed, my mother was infuriated, my family's wealth was taken over by the powerful, and I left behind a 2-year-old younger brother who was starving. The 2 siblings who were driven out of the Mei family's old house were penniless and had nowhere to turn, while those who had known each other fled like a plague. The original owner had to drag his parents wrapped in straw mats and live in a dilapidated ghost house at the north gate. Due to the lack of rice to cook, the 13-year-old owner went out to help others. Poor Swill. I heard that his father's death was intentional by the second wife of the Duke of Angua's mansion. Just because her father was invited to the mansion to see a doctor and peeked through the secret of the second wife of the Marquis' mansion, but was falsely accused of neglecting human life and became a substitute for death. In front of the powerful, human life is like grass, without even a chance to defend. After learning the truth, Mei Ziyu returned to the ghost house and became depressed. From the respected miss of the Jimin Medicine Hall, she became a pitiful person with both her parents dead, and under the double blow, she fell ill and couldn't get up. When she opened her eyes again, she changed her heart. The ace bodyguard of the 23rd century, Ziyu, who died for her country at the age of 28. Ziyu, who understands the current environment, has an unbearable headache. What kind of luck is this? Give her a chance to live again. Why would it be the beginning of a tragic situation? Have you not been an orphan enough in the previous life? Oh my goodness, this is just playing with her. I wanted her to serve the organization at the age of 10, but in the end, she ended up with no bones left. Coming naked, but leaving in powder, saving a large amount of hard-earned money without even an heir. I originally wanted to retire at the age of 30, find a place with beautiful mountains and rivers to retire, and have a pure little puppy to play with, but everything turned into nothing. Unfortunately, she saved up 180 million yuan, and now it's cheaper to travel to a certain country, everything has become fleeting. Purple Jade extends its slender middle finger to the sky. Breaking the heavens. Bang long long, thunder echoed in the dry sky, causing Purple Jade to retract her hand in fear. Old thief, I can't even talk about you. Ziyu muttered to herself, carefully observing the silence outside the courtyard before finally feeling relieved. Ziyu closed her eyes and felt Dantian. The original owner had learned some basic martial arts, and her physical fitness was stronger than that of an ordinary young lady. The reason for changing the chip was because she had lost the courage to face reality, leaving no trace of her soul behind. The memories that Ziyu had gained were only a part of what happened after the incident. What a headache. Yundu is a completely unfamiliar place to Ziyu now, and the more important thing now is to fill her stomach. At this thought, there was a burning pain in Ziyu's stomach. It's been a while since she experienced the feeling of being hungry, it's really damn uncomfortable. Her own space is still there, but unfortunately, the once fertile land has turned into the Gobi Desert. The 10-acre fish pond left for her has a dry mouth, and 2 intelligent multifunctional agricultural machines, 2 sets of 900 square meter 3-story heavy and light steel villas, and an 800 square meter steel cast basement are all part of it. The villa and basement were once filled with specialties, antiques, precious jade, stones, and gold bars collected from various countries for 18 years. They were 100 times the wealth of her digital bank, leaving not a single residue. Fortunately, the refrigerated and frozen areas separated by the basement are still operating normally. Thank you, sir. She is now completely poor, a very poor household with no toilet paper left. Sister, drink water. Mei Ziluo, with a small face blackened by smoke, held a small bowl of steaming warm water. The turbid warm water in the rough bowl, floating with black dust, made the stumbling child focus all his attention on the bowl. Stumbling underfoot, the bowl in his hand watched as the purple jade body, leaning against the wall, moved slightly as it flew out. With one hand catching the bowl she had left behind and the other holding a small ball of collar, the simple movements made her gasp for breath. Xiaoluo, sit down. Zaichuanzi leaned into Ziyu's arms with dependence, holding the bottom of the bowl in her hand and urging her. Sister, drinking water will cure her illness. Scattered hair covered half of her small face, her wet big eyes filled with fear and cowardice, and a dirty little hand tightly grasped the corner of Ziyu's clothes. Okay, sister, drink. Ziyu drank half a bowl of water calmly. Smoke smell. Earthy smell. Stagnant water smell, sister, you won't get sick again. Mei Ziluo looked at the empty bowl and showed her first smile after leaving home. Goo. Goo goo goo. Mei Ziluo shyly covered her belly and lowered her head, afraid to look at her sister. Sister, everything is fine now. Xiaoluo, take a nap. When sister calls you, there will be something to eat, okay? Ziyu felt a sense of compassion in her heart. As a once young woman, she wished for a shoulder to rely on, even if she didn't have enough to eat. Raising a child is not a difficult task for her, even if she is now starving and heartbroken. Okay, sister must call me. Mei Ziluo obediently closed her eyes, her dirty little hands covering her eyes, afraid to go against her sister's words. At a young age, he realized too early that his sister was his only relative. Ziyu held the small child with little weight and listened to his even breathing, feeling a chill in her heart. In the blink of an eye, even the person and the messy grass disappeared into the ghost house. In the second-floor bedroom, Ziyu gently placed Xiaoluo, who was sleeping, on the messy grass pile in the corner. She took off her morning clothes and gently patted him back to sleep. The spacious bedroom with bright windows was left with only empty shelves, and the old mahogany flooring was nowhere to be seen. Ziyu, who was preparing to leave, didn't trust leaving Xiaoluo in the ghost house and had to bring people into the space. Without her guidance, Xiaoluo couldn't leave the villa. Ziyu, who was slowly leaving, wore a blue-colored dress with obvious wrinkles. Her slender hands flipped up and down, and the destitute wealthy lady turned into a poor girl in an instant. In the Yushur era, the ancient street with lanterns hanging high, and pedestrians wearing clothes similar to ancient Hanfu. Ziyu smelled the aroma emanating from the tavern and her saliva secretion accelerated in her mouth. Her dark eyes flickered slightly, and her delicate face, covered by her hair, began to smile bitterly. Her slender figure disappeared into the shadows. A penny cannot defeat a hero. In the shadow, Ziyu looked at the tavern on the second floor of the wooden building across from her, which was the largest one she had encountered along the way. The noisy voices and rich aroma of food make the burning stomach even more uncomfortable. This is it. In the previous era, the text was changed to empty ancient words, and many old irons like to collect them. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The worst beginning in history. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. One can't defeat heroes with money. Ziyu rubbed her hands heavily against the wall behind her, and her retracted palms rubbed against her small face. She lowered her head and infiltrated the crowd of people doing odd jobs in the backyard. She took a freshly washed dish from an ant and sent it into the noisy big kitchen. A long table at the door was full of fresh dishes, and the waiter who came and went to serve the dishes became a pot of porridge. The large pot on the stove inside was steaming with mist, and everyone in the stuffy kitchen was feeling restless and their voices were surprisingly loud. Ziyu, who had put down the dishes, turned her foot and walked past a large pot. Her swinging hand touched the sides of the two pots and immediately left. Talking about you. Why wander around in the kitchen if you don't wash the vegetables properly? Hurry up and get out, shouted the assistant who was doing odd jobs, commanding. Ziyu didn't say a word, hurriedly walking out with a frightened expression, and behind her came a voice of dissatisfaction. Poor people's homes really have no rules at all. Can you wait to enter the kitchen? Ziyu, who was leaving the back door, threw down the swill bucket in her hand and ran 2 steps to flip into the adjacent backyard. She borrowed the bedding and clothes from a room and disappeared without a trace. The bedroom with the sheets covering the window was a bit dark, with 2 coats and a few clothes spread on the exposed yellowed cotton tire. On a clean piece of clothing next to her, there was rice and stew pot that she had brought along. Ziyu squatted in front of the messy haystack, patting the little one curled up in a ball and saying, "Xiaoluo, it's time for dinner." The little one in his sleep trembled with surprise, and he crawled up and threw himself into Ziyu's arms. He hugged her in surprise and looked up, saying, "Sister, you're back. Be good, sleep after dinner." Ziyu held Xiaoluo and sat on the bedding, pointing to the smoking food in front of her. "Hands dirty." Ziluo spread out her pitch-black little hand to show Ziyu, with an indescribable joy on her face and a hint of silver oozing from the corner of her mouth. "Eating dirty without sores, wait for sister to find water before washing." Ziyu took out 2 chopsticks made from tree branches and handed them to Xiaoluo. The only one was the sea cucumber stew cup, which he shared with him and mixed with rice. Ziluo, who was dominated by food, clumsily picked up rice with a branch while holding a slightly hot stewing cup. Ziyu, who was having a meal, glanced at Xiaoluo, who didn't cry, and sped up her movements. The siblings sitting on the bedding eating, but there was no trace of embarrassment or rudeness. After being 80% full, Ziyu stopped Xiaoluo from eating again and started talking nonsense while holding on to the little one. "Xiaoluo, do you still remember your grandparents?" "I don't remember." Ziluo, feeling a bit sleepy after finishing her meal, shook her head and tried to open her eyes wide, wriggling nervously. "Sister, the little one blushed as he couldn't hold it back. Ziyu, who was taking care of a little kid for the first time, suddenly realized and disappeared into the bedroom in an instant. In the pitch-black and quiet alleyway, the night breeze blew on me, making me feel cold. The little black figure with his back to him hurriedly finished urinating. The small face with his pants up was wrinkled, but unfortunately no one could see the expression on his face. "Sister, it's so dark." The low and timid voice made people feel heartbroken. "Sister, take you back to sleep alone. Close your eyes." Ziyu, who had disappeared in place, stuffed the closed-eyed Xiao Luo into the old bedding and gently patted him until he fell asleep before leaving. Tongan Street, Jimin Pharmacy. In the hour of high, the streets under curfew were empty, with only the sound of night shifts heard from afar. Wearing a neat black robe, Purple Jade feet stepped on the wall and flew to take down the plaque of the May Family Medicine Hall. The Purple Jade hidden in the shadow, with its right hand caressing the plaque, rests on a small character in the upper right corner. You really have a good plan. Even without changing your name, you forcibly occupy civilian property. The powerful have been cruel and inhumane since ancient times. Without any hesitation, Ziyu put away the plaque, twisted the copper lock on the door, and pushed it in. Suddenly, a scene of the original owner playing since childhood appeared in her mind. The lovely Snow Bun is deeply loved by her parents. When she was young, she often sat on her father's lap and sang soup songs, while her gentle mother smiled and waited on her side. Until Xiaoluo was born, the original owner cherished this young brother like a precious treasure, but failed to withstand the heavy blow of losing both parents and perished. Ziyu blinked away the dampness in her eyes, and a raging anger surged in her heart. A harmonious and benevolent family of doctors was destroyed by the filthy hearts of certain elites. What a bullying Duke of Angua's mansion! What a great power! The medicine cabinet, tables and chairs, warehouse, 3 large storefronts, and 5 rooms in the backyard were all taken into the space villa by Ziyu, who covered the door and left. The moon is dark and the wind is high at night, it is the time for chivalry. The slender black shadow faced the bustling streets of the western city, dodging the soldiers patrolling the streets all the way. Xiangfu Street is the busiest street in Yundu. The 2,000-meter-long street gathers various shops of the upper-class elites in Yundu, providing everything in clothing, food, housing, and transportation. Immersed in the scene, Ziyu's mind flashed with shops with signs with the character and accounting for 50% of this long street. She found that every half hour, the soldiers patrolling the city would pass by this street, and she would flash into the space to make strong overpowering drugs using the herbs she received. The rich medicinal herbs made Ziyu adept, and when she concocted a large jar of aphrodisiac, she also easily made a bottle of antidote. In her past life, Ziyu did many things that she casually carried out while carrying out missions abroad. Otherwise, with her little hard-earned money, she wouldn't be able to store hundreds of square meters of abundant reserves. After taking a pill of antidote, Ziyu covered her face with a ceremonial black scarf and flashed out of space with a large guillotine on her shoulder. She listened attentively to the sound of neat footsteps in the distance, her lips slightly hooked under the black scarf. It was her turn to start. All embroidery shops, fur shops, ready-to-wear shops, shoe shops, fabric shops, grain shops, pastry shops, grocery stores, porcelain shops, jade and silver shops, antique shops, pharmacies, calligraphy and painting shops, bookstores, and pawn shops with the character, and are all sold out. The products that the Duke of Angua's mansion has settled in Xiangfu Street are all high-quality, even the most inconspicuous grocery stores sell top-quality products. The place passed by like a locust passing through without leaving a trace. Who would have thought that the tightly closed door had been looted? Encountering someone who is staying at the door, I easily solved it with a bunch of overpowering drugs. When encountering resistance, she wielded a guillotine. Seeing the life and death of Ziyu, her face remained unchanged and her hands did not tremble. When she sneaked into an iron shop, she heard a faint jingling sound coming from underground, holding her breath and lightly stepping on the ground like a cat. After scraping away all the ironware in the store, she quickly moved away and realized that the blacksmith shop that appeared here was strange. But these things are not something that a person from a different time and space should manage. The best strategy is to stay away from them. Next door, there is a sedan shop with 10 luxurious carriages arranged, with copper and iron edges and wheels. The decorated canopy and car curtains are embroidered with gold and silver threads. There were ready-made means of transportation, and Ziyu laughed at them all, not even letting go of the creaking old rack cars in the backyard. For an hour, the bustling 2,000-meter street was quietly swept away by the purple jade, leaving no trace of it. Without stopping, Ziyu rushed to the small street in the backyard of the Duke of Angwa's mansion, and aroused a strong interest in the magnificent high-walled courtyard in front of her. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. One can't defeat the heroic Han. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Empty Enemies Warehouse. The Duke of Angwa's mansion covers an area of about 50 acres and holds a crucial position in this land of gold and silver, known as Yundu. For Ziyu, who has experienced countless battles, this courtyard is a piece of cake regardless of its height and defense. Like a purple jade ape, it climbed up the ridge of the Angwa Marquis mansion, which was loose on the outside and tight on the inside, aiming at the brightly lit courtyard and flashing away. The ghostly figure blew like a gentle breeze. The heavily guarded courtyard is unusual at first glance. Purple Jade, who enjoys challenges, knows that this must be the most important place in the mansion. Wherever they passed, strong, colorless and tasteless smoke packs scattered down, and the person on duty slept to death without any reaction. Pai Ba Ha. The sound of sparks exploding was accompanied by a series of snores, and a petite black figure took a string of keys from the waist of a burly man, with a slight curl in its mouth. It really comes without any effort. A courtyard with an ordinary appearance, but inside there is a unique cave. When the heavy iron door was pushed open, there was no sense of stagnation. A shelf that reaches up to the roof of a house, covering an area of about 50 square meters, displays top-notch delicacies from all over the world. Swimming in the sea and flying in the sky, there are also rare treasures from deep mountains and forests. What surprised Ziyu the most was a shelf full of glass jars filled with caviar. Centennial ginseng and lingji mushrooms were casually thrown into a large box in the corner, and only those from thousands of years held a place on the shelf. Rich ingredients, even the high-ranking emperor doesn't have so many. In an instant, all the delicacies and shelves in the room disappeared. Due to time constraints, Ziyu flew in and ran around, and everything entered her big villa. The seawater pearls in Dajuosheng are as big as Longan, with 7 or 8 red corals that are 2 meters high, 2 giant jade carvings that are 3 meters high, red gold Buddha statues, and dotted green golden crowns. Various exquisite jewelry, jade ornaments, ancient books, calligraphy and paintings make Purple Jade, who are accustomed to seeing good things in later generations, unable to close their mouths. The top-quality Pearl Jade is in front, and the exquisite and luxurious silk and satin may not be as outstanding, but it is also within her collection in scraping range. All the things in the 9 warehouses have been collected and scraped, and there are no boxes of gold, silver, or a grain of grain, which is obviously very unconventional. She stood in the yard and patrolled around, only to find that the foundation was higher than the ordinary yard, and her eyes flashed with clarity. The basement door slowly opened a crack, and Ziyu flashed in. Under the illumination of the night pearl on the wall, she opened the nearest large black wooden box on the ground. The full box of silver ingots was unmarked, and at a glance, there were 500 black boxes. Ziyu took them without hesitation. In the second basement, the golden light almost lit up her titanium alloy eyes under the sparkling light, filling a box full of unmarked gold ingots. 20 ingots per layer, 50.2 per box, arranged according to the standard of 5 layers. 200 pieces of sandalwood box, purple jade drooling happily flashed by without seeing its teeth or eyes, and all of them were placed in the bag. The 30 large boxes of gold and silver barley, peanuts, and beans in the corner were not so outstanding, and were also accepted by Ziyu Xiaoxiao in the principle of not wasting. The third and fourth basements were filled with weapons and armor shining with cold light, and Ziyu instantly understood that the Duke of Angua's mansion had ulterior motives. This is going to rebel. No wonder she collected a huge amount of gold and silver, but didn't see a silver ticket. In theory, gold and silver tickets would be easier to hide and carry. Now it's all cheaper for her. Ziyu collects half of the weapons she needs for future use, so she must leave some thoughts for the rebels. In the last basement, the bright yellow and red gold woven python dragon robe, crown, phoenix robe, and phoenix crown once again confirmed Ziyu's conjecture. Ziyu waved her hand and all these things entered her waist bag. She had intended to sneak into the courtyard of the second lady and deal with it with a single blow. After seeing the collection of the Marquis' mansion, Ziyu changed her mind and her second goal was the study of the Duke of Angua. The whole mansion, controlled by intense smoke, snored profusely, and Ziyu's mouth twitched as she accelerated her movements without any obstruction. Sweep through the study of the main courtyard without leaving any paper, and find a spot in the darkroom hidden behind the wall. Boxes of account books, letters, and gift lists exchanged with officials from various prefectures. A large scale map of Baiyun Kingdom on the wall, with detailed descriptions of surrounding countries and terrain. Finally encountered something useful, thank you old thief. Ziyu, who had emptied the study, did not go to collect the belongings of the main courtyards anymore, but went straight to the pharmacy and kitchen of the Marquis' mansion. After smelling the smell and finding the pharmacy, they collected everything and even picked up a few blooming flowers in the garden. In the big kitchen, there are nearly 300 sacks of rice, flour, grains, and oil in one room, as well as half a room full of soy sauce, vinegar, tea, sugar, and various seasonings and dry goods. The jars and jars in half the room were scraped clean, not even the firewood and spatula were left behind. Seeing that it was not early, the Purple Jade group disappeared into the Duke of Angua's mansion and inserted an iron spear into the plaque at the entrance as they left. The gun barrel was adorned with dragon robes and phoenix robes, and several large boxes containing account books and letters were placed on the ground. Ziyu jumped onto the roof and led the soldiers and horses patrolling the city to the Duke of Angua's mansion. They hurriedly reported the stolen goods before leaving. At the north gate, the gloomy ghost house was filled with shivers. The girl wearing some dirty morning clothes was carrying a basket with a lid on her back, and a pair of confused eyes were exposed in the gap between the baskets. Ziyu left the ghost house with a creaking cart and was the first to line up at the entrance of Peking University. "Hey, little girl, what kind of person are you pulling? How come it smells so bad?" The soldier on duty at the city gate covered his mouth and nose and asked from a distance. "Soldier, this is my parents. Maitsang and his wife from the Jimin Medicine Hall. My daughter will take them back to their hometown for burial. It's a helpless act to stain the mouth and nose of soldier. Please kindly open the city gate." "Thank you, soldier." Ziyu lowered her head and said respectfully. The pedestrians who came one after another were 2 meters away from Ziyu, and they all shook their heads sympathetically upon hearing it. "Binji, please be accommodating. Dr. May has been kind to people throughout his life, with excellent medical skills and a willingness to give generously. It's just that good people don't last long, they die inexplicably, and there's no one who can defend them." The old man, who looked like a master, poked his head out of the carriage and said. "Soldier, whether it's convenient for others or oneself, both have parents at home," the accompanying young scholar boldly advised. Everyone had feelings of concern, but they were very clear about what kind of existence the Duke of Angua's mansion was in Yundu, so they could only sweep the snow in front of each door. The soldiers guarding the city gate are well informed and have heard of it for a long time. They look up at the time and don't mind opening the city gate a little earlier. Ga squeak. The thick city gate was pushed open by the joint force of 4 soldiers, and Ziyu pulled a cart and stumbled past. "Miss May, don't go back to Yundu again in the future," the soldier who asked whispered. "Xia Binji reminds me." The people queuing up to enter the city smelled the stench and dodged one after another, while the dilapidated cars gradually faded into the darkness before dawn in the eyes of everyone. "Close the door. Close the door. No one is allowed to enter or exit the peak with orders, otherwise they will be dealt with as rebels." A cavalry galloped towards them, waving a red flag as soldiers shouted loudly. The slowly closed city gate blocked the frightened view inside and outside. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Empty Enemy's Warehouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Full door plagiarism. The north wind howled past, blinded and heartbroken. In the middle of the hour of Een, the Nguaho mansion was heavily surrounded by the Imperial Guard, with its snowy blades flashing a chilling light that devoured people. Archers with bows stood on the walls and roofs. 100 Nguaho, dressed in disheveled clothes, was trapped under the bed, but he confidently held up his invincible gold medal and scolded the invading guards. "You dare to act recklessly. I am the former imperial relative who bestowed the title of Marquis, attacking the foolish ruler and killing treacherous officials. Who dares to touch me?" Under the blazing torch, the head of the imperial household department, Duke Da, had a white face and slightly bulging temples. He held the imperial edict held by the eunuch beside him and unfolded it. The imperial edict of the late emperor said, "If the Duke of Angua, Xiang Hongliang, and his family intend to rebel, they will reclaim the gold medal for avoiding death." The emperor's edict reads, Duke Ho of Angua, led by Zhao Hongliang, conspired to rebel and executed 9 tribes. He was immediately imprisoned and awaiting trial. 2 imperial edicts were announced, and the imperial guards rushed towards the Gongxiang clan like wolves, without giving them a chance to react. The rebels were killed on the spot. All the people in the Nguaho mansion who were asleep were captured without exception. A full box of belongings and bundles of weapons were found, occupying half of the street in front of the Hofu gate. Duke Da straightened his back and looked at Nguaho with a proud expression, like a lost dog. He endured hardships for decades, witnessed the downfall of the Gongxiang family with his own eyes, and was able to comfort his parents, wife, and children in the spring. In this life, if one can meet a benefactor, one must be loyal to the labor of dogs and horses, and die later. Heavenly Prison. Emperor Tianqing, in his early 30s, dressed in casual clothes, was furious when he saw Gong Xiang, who had been tortured, and refused to admit the whereabouts of the tens of millions of valuable assets on the secret account book. Bring the male members of the Gongxiang family to trial one by one, regardless of their size. I can't figure out how hard his mouth is to continue interrogating women. How could the heavenly Qin emperor, who was puffing his brows and puffing his breath, miss the opportunity to torment his heart and stomach? The concubines forcibly sent to the palace by the Gongxiang family had already been resolved when they left the palace. Princesses and princes who shed the blood of the Gongxiang family will not give them a chance to survive. Cutting the grass without removing its roots, the spring breeze blows and it grows again. Gong Xiang Hongliang had no idea where the stolen gold and silver in the mansion had gone. He witnessed his 2-year-old great-grandson die under torture and knew that his family would not escape death. He smiled grimly. Tianqing child. Become a king and defeat a bandit, I will wait for you in hell. Execution. The enraged Emperor Tianqing waved his hand, and all the torture in prison was exhausted, but he did not get the result he wanted. Emperor Tianqing, who was extremely demoralized, came to an end without success. Finally, he ordered the 9 clans of Gongxiang to be pushed out of the Meridian Gate and immediately beheaded. The missing gold and silver have become an eternal mystery, attracting the pursuit of people and horses from all walks of life. The return of imperial power will inevitably lead to power disputes. The mysterious disputes in the court have nothing to do with Ziyu, who left the city, and she will no longer dedicate herself to anyone in this life. Live only for yourself. At noon, there is an unnamed hill 30 miles outside Yundu. Xiaoluo, parents can only be buried here. When you grow up and move away, you must remember your location, Ziyu said to Ziluo, who was crying and hiccuping. Sister, I miss my parents so much. Will I never see them again? Dad and Mom live in your heart, you can see them anytime, it's time we left. Ziyu took off her outer clothes a few times, revealing her black and powerful attire inside, and covered her with a uniformly colored linen gray rabbit fur coat. The black silk that reached the waist was cut with scissors, leaving only 2 palms tied into a high bun, fixed with a silver crown. Wearing a knight's hat and half a square-headed deer-skin thick-soled boots, the exquisite craftsmanship far exceeds Ziyu's understanding of this era. Xiaoluo, let's go. Sister, I also need to change clothes. The purple eyes of the rabbit had a shrunken mouth, and their small hands were uncomfortable lifting the skirt hem that reached the shoe upper. They were dressed in a pink brocade dress with a pure white rabbit fur coat, and wore a pair of pink embroidered shoes on their feet. Looking up, the pearl flowers on the corner shimmered in the sunlight, and the pink ribbon danced lightly in the wind. Remember, I am my brother and you are my sister. Say it wrong once, get hungry a few more times, and remember. From now on, our surname is Z, and we must not say anything wrong. Remember my brothers, 3 knows, Ziyu is serious and authentic. From this moment on, she is not planning to use the identity of the Mei family. The 2 of them need a new identity document to travel around easily. No matter how much curiosity Ziluo had, he couldn't resist the threat of hunger. All he knew was to always be with his sister. Brother. Where are we going? Well behaved, my brother will first show you the customs and traditions of various places. Find another place that opens the door to the sea and backs against the mountains, and build the safest fortress. Xiaoluo can grow up freely. Ziyu dug a small pit next to the new tomb, buried the clothes that the 2 had changed into, and built a small tomb bag, which can be considered as Ziyu's attire tomb. The broken carriage had been dismantled by her and made into a simple coffin, leaving only the iron hoe in her hand. When Ziyu carried the basket on her back again and left, the iron hoe disappeared into her hand. Instead, a brown soft whip was wrapped around her wrist, and Ziluo in her backpack opened a gap to look at the gradually fading mountain. At a young age, he didn't know what parting meant, but only remembered what his brother said about his parents living in his heart. Ziyu, whose ancestral home is unknown, did not intend to go and search for the roots of the Mei family, nor did she rely on others to live. Returning to the official road, I saw the pedestrians on the road looking panicked, all rushing by the roadside. Da-da-da. The rapid sound of horse hooves approached from afar, and a group of cavalry dressed in black clothes and red cloaks swept past like a wind, blowing up waves of smoke and dust. The person who stopped by the roadside and lowered their head to give way was as restrained as a cicada, afraid to breathe heavily for fear of attracting the attention of the cavalry. At the corner of purple Jade's eye, Yu Guang saw the sturdy and tall steed, feeling envious and regretful for forgetting the stable in the Duke's mansion. The frame she received was too luxurious, and she dared not make an appearance within the scope of this cloud city. She could only step forward to the next town and make plans. Along the way, there were so many cavalry roaring past that it was numbing. Seeing this battle, Ziyu knew in her heart that what she had left behind played a decisive role. She could be considered helping the emperor eliminate a major calamity. I wonder if there will be a list of rewards. Ziyu couldn't help but feel amused when she thought of this. How could she change her body and even her thoughts become childish? This can be considered releasing oneself. After experiencing too much, Ziyu naturally accepted this identity, and now she can be said to be on the wealthy side, without having to rush for life. 2.5 million taels of silver and 1 million taels of gold, not to mention the value of other things, I believe that even the lofty emperor wouldn't have so many in stock. The rest only needs to enjoy this life in a different time and space, perhaps one day settle down in a certain place and establish one's own power. Ziyu is very clear that no matter which dynasty or generation, fairness is built on absolute power. I can't say for sure when she will carry out Mao's political power out of the barrel of the gun in this extraordinary time and space to the end. I would rather be a lonely eagle than a mole ant to be needed by others. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Full Door Plagiarism. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 5. Leaving Ziyu, who was lurking in the crowd on the official road and leaving at the speed of a snail, looked at the cavalry rushing past her with a bright light in her eyes and her lips slightly curled up. Who would have thought that Emperor Tianqing, who was perched on a dragon chair, tasted the sweetness of the officials involved in the theft of their homes due to the emptiness of the national treasury, and sent people and horses from all walks of life to recover the dirt. The princes, who were eager to relieve their father's worries, took their own needs and volunteered to participate in the division of power, consolidating their respective forces. The struggle for power never ends. Bali town is the closest bustling small town to Yundu, as many people can only stay here because the city gate is not open. When Ziyu followed the walking crowd into Bali town, various lanterns were already hung on the quaint streets. The tavern was bustling with people, and the street food stalls were also crowded with diners sitting or standing. Ghosthouses of all sizes hung crowded signs at the entrance. Brother, many people. Standing in the basket, Ziluo looked curiously at the bustling town, touching her slightly swollen belly and observing from side to side. There's no inn to stay in, what should Xiaoluo do? Stay in a new home. Hee, you can't live casually in your new home. Brother, take you to find a place to live. Ziyu turned around and walked towards the small street, stopping in front of a semi-old blue brick courtyard with its doors wide open. Under the dim yellow lantern, a young boy of about 10 years old was dressed in a slightly whitewashed scholar's uniform, holding a yellowed book and reciting words. Young man, your family's adults are available. Please take a step to speak, Ziyu said with a hand arched in a casual manner. Young master, do you need accommodation? The young boy put away his book and stood there, as if he was just waiting for someone. Perhaps someone who was used to seeing each other. He was not very curious about the appearance of Ziyu. Little brother is smart. The town inn is already full, and my sister and I have nowhere to go. Can we stay overnight at your house? Accommodation and meals can be charged at market prices. Ziyu glanced at the young boy's clothes and smiled, explaining his intention. Come on in. This kind of thing happens from time to time in town, and the neighbors around will take advantage of it to earn a share of silver to support their families. My mother is sick and occasionally coughs. Please don't mind. My elder sister is a courtesan and I apologize for any inconvenience in meeting guests. But she cooks well, please. The young man's words were appropriate, and although he was dressed plainly, he had no sense of inferiority. Ziyu smiled and nodded as she entered the hospital. Upon entering the courtyard, Ziyu glanced at the northern courtyard under the candlelight and followed the young boy into the second room on the left. There are people coming in and out of the adjacent room, and it seems that they are also coming to stay overnight. It sounds like an older mother and daughter. Young man, prepare 2 servings of dinner and 1 egg custard for us, as well as hot water for bathing. Ziyu took out 2 silver beans from her wide belt, and when she handed them out, they were already crushed by her. Master Xie, just 1 silver bean is enough. I'll have to ask you about something later, and I'll pay you for the consultation fee. Okay, we'll be here soon. The young boy happily responded loudly, even shouting out the words of the running boy. He pinched the 2 flat silver beans in his palm and took a few steps to rush into the kitchen. After taking a sip of water, he rushed into the main room and handed the silver beans in his hand to his bedridden mother. The purple Jade in the wing room could hear the happy voices of the mother and son, and smiled as she reached out her fingers to wipe the Kong table, nodding in satisfaction. Wash yourself with the hot water provided, put on clean clothes, and if you're not careful, no one will know they've changed clothes. During the shower, Ziyu had time to take out her bronze mirror and look at her current appearance. Her small round face is as delicate as a neighbor's girl, with agile and watery eyes. She is completely different from her previous life's glamour, but she bears a striking resemblance to Xiao Luo. Due to the change in soul, there is a completely different kind of determination in the eyes, which matches the appearance of the hero. Not bad, it would be great to switch to a different way of life. She threw the clothes she had changed into the space and came back to wash them when she had time, thinking that she needed to buy a usable maid. For the time being, there is no fixed place to live. There must be someone who does dry cleaning and grooming, without intelligent butlers and appliances. Everything needs to be done by hand, which is a bit troublesome. After dinner, Ziyu learned from a young boy about the current prices and where to buy a suitable mule cart. "Young master, I'm classmates with Xiao Ji, the owner of the mule company. I promise you'll pick the best one. You can go now." "That's great, go now." Upon hearing this, Ziyu immediately responded and put Xiaoluo back into the basket before leaving. Under the night sky, the lights in Bali town were brightly lit, and the doors of various shops were open. The days when the city gates were not opened were the best time for them to do business. On the street, there are yamen guards patrolling with knives, driving away people or vehicles in the middle of the road to avoid being trampled to death by galloping horses. With acquaintances leading the way, Ziyu bought a sturdy horse and mule for 15 taels of silver, with a box frame of 5 taels. I also bought some items that I needed on the road, such as blankets, small stoves and bowls, felt cloth, rain gear, etc., which cost me 2 taels of silver. After buying around, Ziyu realized that silver was equivalent to money in later time and space, but many things were much cheaper. "Don't you want to buy some convenient food? My sister's steamed stuffed buns mantou are very delicious," the young boy timely recommended. "Hee, let your sister work hard. I want 2 steamed buns, 2 mantou, and 5 jin of fried noodles and rice. I didn't expect all the cooked food on the street to be sold out. I don't know how long this situation will last. Young master, be cautious," the young boy whispered as he glanced at the running horses. In his view, the young master in front of him was just a young sister who had never traveled far and had nothing prepared. "Hey, every family has a difficult lesson to read." We had a peaceful night together, and the next morning, when Ziyu was ready to leave, she received a large basket of cooked food she wanted, carefully packaged with clean packaging. The shy girl put down the big basket and ran into the kitchen to take out a basket of finely chopped firewood and a matchstick. "Young master, take your time." "Thank you so much, I didn't even think of buying a matchstick." Ziyu glanced at the shy girl and burst out laughing. "Hand the young boy 10 flat silver beans, which weigh exactly 1 or 2. Master Xie, have a smooth journey." The young boy bowed and thanked her generously, earning 1 or 2 taels of silver overnight, which was a huge income for their family. The family's monthly expenses rely entirely on occasional guests staying to make a living, earning a staggering 3 taels of silver per month. Looking at many, but often unable to make ends meet. Buying medicine for his frail mother and the cost of attending a private school have dragged down his older sister, who is still unmarried. The young boy standing at the door, who had prematurely understood the hardships of life, only hoped to have a few more generous guests like the young master. Ziyu, who was driving a mule cart, left Bali town slowly, with very few people leaving along the way, and a steady stream of people rushing towards Bali town. She originally wanted to leave with the caravan or escort team, but when she came out in the morning, she inquired around the town and none of them left today. Everyone knows their own business, so she can only leave first. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Leaving. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The taste of freedom. On the official road, the galloping horses rolled up gusts of sand and wind, causing Ziyu, who was driving, to cough. The officers and soldiers who frequently left the city scared some timid passers-by back to the mansion, and Ziyu silently tied a silk handkerchief to cover her face. She thought of the things she had handed over, enough to make Nguoho die without a burial place, and a sweet smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. The further away from Yundu, the more relaxed Ziyu felt on her body, as if she was free from shackles. During her 18-year career as a bodyguard in her past life, Ziyu encountered many strange things and was not a true materialist. In the dark, there is a divine will, and a brand new life truly begins. Xiagu Prefecture, the closest city to Yundu, occupies an important geographical position and is a must-pass city to the north. 5 days later, the dusty purple Jade rushed to the gate of the gate and paid a 10 entry fee before leading a mule cart on the quaint streets. Stores with good business will gradually hang lanterns, while those with little business will start knocking on doors to end the day's hard work. The shops near the city gate are mostly made of a single layer of wooden structure, and there is a handsome young man standing at the entrance of the tavern and inn to greet customers. Shouting out her green and astringent voice, one by one loud, giving Ziyu a sense of a film and television city. Lying by the window, looking at the strange purple luo, it was not much better than purple jade, with scattered pearls and flowers in the corners. Brother, there are so many people. The tired little face immediately came to life as soon as it entered the city. With sparkling eyes, he looked at the crowds passing by. The little one who was on a long journey for the first time was extremely curious about everything. Along the way, besides sleeping in the carriage, I didn't even let go of a tree just by asking questions. Ziyu, who had never taken a little kid with her, tried several times to throw someone out of the car and let him live and die on his own, but in the end, she couldn't put her heart into it. This is called Xiagu Mansion. We will rest here for a few days, and my brother will take you out to play tomorrow morning. Okay. Brother is the best. The annoying little fart child clapped her hands sweetly with her small mouth, which may be why Ziyu couldn't bear to leave him with such determination. Young master, may I ask if you want to take a break or stay in a hotel? Our store is safe, hygienic, and fair to all. We have a complete range of stir-fried, cooked, and noodle dishes. The young man bowed to Ziyu and reached out to pick up the stiff rope in her hand. Ziyu glanced at the Volkswagen in behind him, a 2-story wooden building, and a plaque at the entrance shining with oil under the lanterns. Thank you for your hard work, young man. I want a quiet upper room while staying at the hotel. Okay, young master, please. The young man responded loudly, and a loud tenor inside the inn responded. The young master is staying in a quiet and sophisticated room. Please come inside. Ziyu handed the reins in her hands to the young man's hand, picked up Ziluo, took off the bundle in the carriage, and threw 10 copper coins to the young man's hand. I saw the young man holding up his collar for a pocket, and the copper coins fell back into his collar like counting, singing loudly. Thank you for your reward, young master. That skilled action, at first glance, indicates that such incidents often occur. When the two of them finished washing up and sat in the upper room for 1.5 taels of silver for dinner, a pillar of incense had already passed. The wooden basin in the corner is filled with a large basin of freshly washed clothes, which cannot be changed all the way, and can only be rubbed and washed at the same time. At the small round table, a simple meat dish and a vegetable dish, plus a bowl of steamed eggs that will never change, a dish of mantu and 2 bowls of rice. Carrying a huge sum of money, Ziyu did not have the habit of extravagance and waste, and used every piece of silver cautiously along the way. The silver ingots she took out were all broken down into small pieces, so there was no need to be so careful with unmarked silver ingots. But the caution cultivated in her past life has become a habit, and it is precisely this habit that has helped her get rid of various troubles. The two of them had no entertainment after dinner, so they called the waiter to clean up the mess and close the door early to rest. At midnight, in the quiet of the night, Ziyu on the bed suddenly opened her eyes and glanced at Ziluo, who was sleeping on her side like a little pig. She flipped over and got up from the bed. Tucking her pillow into the blanket, she walked silently on the wooden floor wearing a cotton robe and barefoot. The autumn night in the north is already as cold as water, with cold feet. A large basin of clothes that had not been dried disappeared in the corner of the house, and a purple jade appeared in the space, hanging the clothes on the bamboo pole erected on the villa balcony. After several days of non-stop cleaning, the things in the villa have been sorted and placed neatly, with a list posted at the door of each room, and the entire villa is packed to capacity. 10 luxury carriages that were temporarily unusable were arranged side by side in front of the villa, with the most spacious carriage covered in soft silk quilts, becoming a refuge for the siblings in times of danger. Ziyu quickly changed into a nighttime outfit, wearing black boots and a black hood that only exposed her eyes and nose, disappearing into the space. Purple Jade, standing by the window, listened to the snoring of the inn's ups and downs, and gently lifted the window lattice to climb out of the room. Before checking in, Ziyu casually explored the layout of the city from the shop assistant's entrance. The streets were pitch black with gusts of cold wind, and only the distant sound of night shifts could be heard occasionally. The officers and soldiers who rode by during the day did not create any tense atmosphere in this city, which is hundreds of kilometers away from the capital. The petite dark shadow turned into the government office and went straight to the clerk's room. Under the illumination of a bright pearl in the palm of his fist, Ziyu poked open the locked cabinet and pulled out 2 blank registered residence papers. According to the handwriting on the registered residence register, 2 real registered residence copies were completed quickly, and they were sealed in 2 seconds. Ziyu returned the item to its original position, wiped away any traces of her past, and left without a trace. Darkness and cold cover everything up well. Walking on the busy street, the brother and sister holding hands each wore a string of tomatoes on sticks, which was slightly sweet and sour, making them squint and grin. Ziyu carried a string of paper bags on her shoulder, and even the cute Zilluo's neck couldn't escape the fate of hanging the paper bags. The siblings bought and ate along the 4 bustling main streets, attracting the attention of many passers-by. Fortunately, they were all cheap food and did not attract the attention of professionals on the street corner. Ziyu, who had set herself free, couldn't help but take a second glance at a young woman wearing a jingling bracelet and carrying a small, fluffy purse like a wallet. What are you looking at? Is my young lady something that you and other common people can see? My young lady is the cousin of the mansion, not worthy of your expectations, the cone-shaped maid next to the young woman thrust into her waist and loudly accused Ziyu. Hee, those who don't know think you're the head of the family. How dare a maid ruin the master's reputation like this? Her heart can be punished. Ziyu inserted her waist and shook her feet with one hand, looking sideways at the rude maid. The young woman suddenly changed her face and shook her hand to give the maid a slap. Noisy. Staring fiercely at Ziyu again, he brushed his sleeves and left. Tsk tisk. Ziyu shook her head as she entered the shop where the woman had just left, leaving passers-by in a daze. Inside the Chixian pavilion, there are handmade bags of different styles hanging on the wall at the entrance, mostly small decorative bags. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Taste of Freedom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Caravan. Ziyu is not interested in this small bag because she has more than 20 items in her collection, which are adorned with luxurious gold and jade bags. The owner's wife, who had a fragrant breeze, saw all the scenes on the street. The clothes of the siblings seemed ordinary, but they were not affordable for ordinary people. Not caring about the worldly ruffians, at first glance it was a young master who did not obey the discipline. Following the principle of harmony and wealth, the landlady personally stepped forward to greet him. I don't know which bag you like, young master. Our store has various styles to choose from, and if you're not satisfied, you can customize it. The landlady is both beautiful and skilled in business, she is the leader among women. The person who wanted to flirt suddenly changed the subject. Young master is really good at speaking, I'm so excited. The boss of the middle-aged Sun Yang covered her face with a silk handkerchief, smiling coquettishly, and scared Ziyu to be serious immediately. Isn't it true that ancient people were very reserved? How could she encounter such openness? I want a backpack that can hold many things, which should be sturdy, durable, waterproof, and preferably made of cowhide. What the young master is talking about is the big bag used by merchants, and we also have it in our store. The landlady restrained her smile, but it was not difficult to see how happy her smile was with the swaying pearl hairpin on her head, and Ziyu could only pretend not to see it. The open customs of Baiyun Kingdom are far from being as stereotypical and conservative as in movies and TV dramas. They may have experienced different trajectories in different time and space. Along the way, women who opened shops and did business often saw them, and unmarried women walking on the streets did not have any scarves or masks. Even more strangely, there was no woman on the street who was a 3-inch golden lotus. The guy took out the most ordinary bucket-shaped backpack from under the cabinet, which could hold half a purple luo. Not bad. How do you sell something that's both simple and versatile? Ziyu was very satisfied with the bucket-shaped backpack made of cowhide on the top layer, but she didn't expect fashion to be at the forefront, which is not a patent of modern talents. 15 taels of silver each, the skins are all smuggled back from the northern border, absolutely good skins. For more, and 2 more bags suitable for children to carry, not too flashy, Ziyu said to Ziluo, who was leaning against her legs. The boss's wife twitched her lips, not expecting the young master to have such a ruthless heart that even a child who couldn't walk steadily would be squeezed. In the end, Ziyu spent 80 taels of silver to buy back 6 bags. The big and small paper bags on the brother and sister's bodies were stuffed into the big backpack, and the remaining bags were carried on their shoulders with a large bundle of leather. That outfit looks like a peddler. Ziyu takes Ziluo shopping every day and always brings back some things. The carriage has also undergone simple renovations. During this period, she carefully studied the map of Baiyun Kingdom and prepared to leave the northern border and head to the Jiangfu Plain before the road was blocked by heavy snow. A desert in the space requires a large amount of water and fertile soil to transform. The Jiangfu Plain is the wealthiest place in Baiyun Kingdom, where there are abundant resources and it is more convenient to collect materials. The Jiangfu Plain is adjacent to Xanadu Prefecture, and the port there has ships leading overseas. Whether it's dealing with the rare treasures in her space or collecting overseas varieties and seafood, Xanadu Mansion is the best choice. After staying at the Volkswagen Inn for 10 days, Ziyu finally learned that a southbound caravan was leaving the day after tomorrow. Coincidentally, the caravan lived at the Whirlwind Inn opposite the Volkswagen Inn. When the siblings, dressed in the same blue cotton robe, appeared at the entrance of the inn holding hands, a group of men in the lobby who were having dinner all looked at them in unison. "Young master, please go back. The inn has already been booked and we do not accept outsiders," the shopkeeper behind the counter quickly declared. "Shopkeeper, I'm staying at the opposite inn and I'm here to discuss things with the leader of the caravan." Ziyu bowed and spoke frankly to everyone in the lobby, knowing some of the rules of the caravan from her understanding these days. "Let him in." A middle-aged man in the center of the lobby, with a weathered face yet still warm, and clear eyes. Ziyu smiled lightly and walked generously through the group of men, standing in front of the middle-aged man and arched his hand. "Good management, our siblings want to go south with the caravan. Would it be convenient for us? Why are you heading south with us? Where did your message come from?" The steward did not directly answer Ziyu's question, but looked directly at her big eyes and frowned slightly. "This is not a secret, okay? I stayed at the inn across from me for 10 days, just to leave with a caravan heading south. Speaking of which, it's also a family disgrace, and there's nothing to hide. My father and mother passed away one after another, and our siblings have been living under my uncle and aunt. It's not easy to rely on others for support. I had to go south to join my grandfather. I had to find a caravan to follow if I was not familiar with the road conditions. I have registered residence as evidence." Ziyu hands in the new registered residence and lets the steward check it carefully. The steward returned the registered residence to Ziyu, took a look at the little baby who was no taller than her legs, and said, "My surname is Wang, and I am the leader of the caravan. Follow the caravan south to Jiangfu, and take care of your own food and accommodation along the way. I am also responsible for safety, and all actions must follow instructions. The vehicle is self-provided and can only follow behind the caravan, costing 100 taels. After opening the city gate the morning after tomorrow, gather outside the city and wait no longer. Pay silver when departing." Wang Guanshi, who knew countless people, naturally accepted the young siblings. When in business, there were requests to go the same way, mostly scattered customers. His caravan has high demands, and most people are reluctant to give up that large amount of money, so they will give up. This time, Yundu has announced that they are not allowed to bring goods out of the city. They have returned empty-handed and can only make up for it on the way. "Prince Ye, please be punctual." Ziyu knew in her heart that the matter had been resolved and bowed her hand in gratitude. "Thank you for taking care of me." Little Ziluo also bowed and thanked. She's a clever little girl. By the way, I would like to remind you to prepare more dry food, charcoal, and thick clothes on the way. Go ahead. Steward Wang, for the sake of the clever little girl, kindly reminded her a little more. At their ages, they probably haven't traveled far and are poor people without parents. There are too many poor people in the world, all he can do is to remind them a few more words, and the rest is helpless. Thank you very much for the manager's reminder. The next day, Ziyu began to go in and out to buy charcoal, grain, oil and salt, eggs, dried meat, dried vegetables, dim sum, and ordinary clothes to keep out the cold. Essential Jin Chuang medicine, Jing Feng pills, hawthorn, water sachet, and even more on the surface. Cabbage, radish, as well as grass for mules and bean cakes, are all purchased. She rented a large stove from the kitchen, laid a large stone inside the house, opened the window, and burned charcoal, fried rice, and mixed noodles. The mixed noodles with added oil and salt were so fragrant that Ziluo's saliva flowed, and he stood in front of the stove without moving. Clean and chop pig bones, chicken and pig feet to remove blood foam, add onion and ginger baijiu to stew until the meat is rotten, and then put them into round wooden barrels to form meat jelly. Of course, they also took the opportunity to sneak 2 large pots into the space for storage, so even if they were on their way, they wouldn't lose their mouths. Yummy Ziluo sat on the ground holding a big bone and trembling with only a little bit of flesh and muscles left. Her hands and face were covered in oil, but she was so happy that she couldn't see her teeth or eyes. The aroma from upstairs drifted all over the inn, and even the steward Wang across knew about Ziyu's preparation for food. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Caravan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Travel. Ziyu drove a mule cart covered in cotton and felt, jingling all the way along with the swaying carrot sticks and cabbage leaves on the body, gathering at the city gate. "Ha, you can't move, little brother." Having heard that Ziyu had prepared a lot of things, Wang Guanshi saw that the mule cart he was driving was covered with things, not to mention a large bundle of hay tied to the roof. Steward Wang laughed at me. "I'm not taking my sister, I just want to prepare more." Ziyu smiled and handed the 2 silver ingots with a few scratches to Steward Wang. If it weren't for fear that even the 2 carriages would be useful. Manager Wang habitually weighed the silver ingot in his hand, confirmed it was correct, and then put it into the bucket bag on his back, circling around the mule cart to look around. This design is good. The front support can block rain and snow, and the hook at the back is also very suitable, which just fixes the outer layer of felt cloth on the carriage. Steward Wang lifted the curtain and saw a tight layer of fine cotton inside, with most of the things piled up in the carriage. He was a promising young man. As everyone arrived, Steward Wang got onto the front carriage. The whip in the driver's hand made a loud noise, and the convoy slowly started. Waiting on the side, Ziyu saw a total of 20.8 carriages and mule carts, but 20 were empty, followed by 5 carriages and mule carts. There are 30 people following on horseback, with 2 middle-aged drivers on each carriage, which can be considered a considerable caravan. The team members are all fierce and not easy to deal with at first glance. Except for Wang Guanshi, the caravans were all dressed in uniform black uniforms, each with a whip, giving off a sense of competence and strength. Purple Jade, who was at the bottom, was fully armed with only her eyes, mouth, and nose exposed. She wore a large cotton hat and tied a piece of felt cloth in front of her to prevent wind. The piercing cold wind in the early morning mixed with the dust carried by the vehicles ahead, hitting the gray layer on the purple Jade blue cotton robe. At noon, the sky is gloomy and the north wind howls. The pedestrians on the road are all siding to avoid the wind and sand, and the advancing convoy shows no signs of stopping, instead accelerating its speed. Ziyu touched her hungry belly, took off the water bag from her waist to drink water, and shivered with excitement. No wonder there are 2 drivers in each car, it's really a miscalculation, brother, I want to pee. Zi Luo, holding her blush, lifted a corner of the front windshield and poked out her cerebellum, saying, "Urine in the nightjar, the one tied in the corner, and eat the dim sum in your backpack when hungry." Ziyu touched the curtain with her elbow, and Ziluo obediently put down the small curtain and played with the drums in the carriage. She reached into her cotton-padded gown and pulled out a large mantu. When she turned her eyes and chewed it directly, her eyebrows jumped when one of the guards looked back. At Yushu, light snow drifted, and pedestrians and vehicles on the road became increasingly scarce. The car behind should accelerate and walk a little longer to rest. "Pay attention to safety in bad weather," a guard shouted backwards on horseback. Turning into the path, a distant village caught the eye, and the group couldn't help but accelerate against the wind. The convoy did not enter the village, but stayed at the head of the village near the water source. After getting off the car, Manager Wang brought 2 guards into the village to greet people. The people in the convoy were busy feeding livestock, cooking pots, and setting up tents. Everything was in an orderly manner. Ziyu jumped off the mule cart and moved her slightly frozen legs, her eyes scanning around. "Mother, what a ghost place. Why don't you go in and stay overnight even though there is a village? I don't want to live in the wilderness, it's so unsafe." A delicate girl's voice emanated from the front carriage. "Listen to your elder brother's arrangement, wait until the next town, and I will find the best inn for you to stay." Ziyu listened clearly to the words of the 2 women, leading the mule cart away from the troublesome body. She didn't have a preference for being abused. All the good positions were occupied by the convoy, and Ziyu picked a piece of land that was not far or near. She took off the barrier and carried Ziluo out of the car, unloading the mule and feeding it with water. In order to prevent the carriage from slipping away accidentally, a hoe was pulled out from the interlayer and dug 2 shallow pits behind the wheels of the car. "Xiao Luo, look at the mule." Ziluo obediently stood in front of the mule that was starting to gnaw on the grass, and didn't cry when she saw her brother carrying a small wooden bucket to fetch water. Ziyu was busy fetching water and filtering it by the small river. After serving the mule and putting it back on, the old and young ignited torches and went out of the village together with Steward Wang. Following behind were 7 or 8 men and women carrying burdens. Under the torches, it was not difficult to see firewood, fresh vegetables with mud, small jars, and covered baskets. Everyone stopped their work. "This is the village chief of Huanghua village, and I have a few words I want to tell everyone." Steward Wang called out to the people. "Hello everyone, old and young. Welcome to Huanghua village. If you need it, you can come to the village to stay overnight. Please be careful of the candles at night and do not trample on the crops. Here are some firewood and food spontaneously brought by the villagers. Please help more. One more thing, please don't enter the village in the dark at night. If there are guards in the village, you will bear the consequences." The old man's half-soft and half-hard words really sounded interesting, and Ziyu was the first to respond. "Thank you for your hard work. I need a bundle of firewood and 2 cabbage. Do you have any eggs? Haha, little brother, be carefree. Dunsey hasn't brought your things over yet for me to pick. The old man stroked his beard and let out a roar, full of vitality. A simple and honest middle-aged man ran a few steps with a burden, stopped in front of Ziyu, and opened the lid. Young man, 1 egg costs 1 cabbage costs 3 and there are also homemade pickled vegetables and spicy sauce. Would you like some? The seemingly naive middle-aged man introduced his own products without hesitation. Ziyu smiled and bought 20 eggs, 2 small cans of pickled vegetables, spicy sauce, 2 cabbage, and a bundle of thin sticks of firewood. Thank you, little brother. A total of 51 I'll charge you 51. Dunsey smiled foolishly, but a hint of shrewdness flashed in his eyes. Ziyu quickly counted out 51 and handed it to Dunsey. As she left with her belongings, some people gathered around to make purchases. In the end, the remaining things of the villagers were wrapped up by the caravan, and everyone naturally returned with all their needs. Another carriage and a mule cart left with the village chief. Ziyu lit a bonfire not far from the mule cart, and while burying the pot for cooking, the people of the caravan had already eaten their food. Add 2 tablespoons of meat jelly to the boiling pot, finely cut cabbage shreds, and knock 3 eggs. 2 palms of dough were spread out on her left hand, and her right hand's kitchen knife swished and sliced the dough. Ziluo, who was guarding the stove and making a fire, was shocked and opened her mouth wide. Xiao Luo's mouth closed, his teeth were about to fall out. Ziyu joked. Ziluo, who had blackened her hands, blushed and closed her chin, leaving a few black marks as she wished. Ha ha ha, Ziyu, you're a tough brother to handle. The steward Wang, who came upon smelling the fragrance, truly admired his young age and his ability to do anything, stronger than many older men. Steward Wang laughed at me. If we live, we must live well, let alone have an inseparable little bean. If you don't mind, come and taste my craft, haha, then I won't be polite. The steward Wang, who travels north and south, often struggles with food on every trade route, with several pots of stewed food and pig-like flavors. Over time, he also ate enough. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Travel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Difficulty in traveling is not bad for mouth. A packet of eggs, more than half a bowl of daoshao noodles, 2 pig hooves, and a tablespoon of noodle soup with vegetable leaves, just enough to fill a large bowl, were handed to Steward Wang. Steward Wang, if the meat jelly is salty, there is no salt added. If the taste is not enough, you can add some spicy sauce. Use it slowly. Ziyu said calmly. Manager Wang nodded secretly and couldn't help but accelerate his eating speed after taking a sip of soup. A group of men not far away were drooling at the sight, but they didn't take the initiative to come forward and eat. Ziyu flipped the wooden bowl of kneading noodles onto the ground, placed half a bowl of noodles with eggs and a piece of pig's trotters on top of the bowl, and put a spoon on top. Xiao Luo, eat slowly. Thank you, brother. Ziluo, who no longer requires washing hands, blew her small mouth bulging against the steaming bowl. Purple jade noodles remained unchanged and were mixed with soup and noodles. They were poured into a large bowl and a spoonful of water was added to the pot. She boldly flicked the hem of her cotton robe and squatted by the fire, eating. Wang Guanshi, who was still unsatisfied, laughed and shook his head to talk to Ziyu. Brother, your soup is good. Do you have any extra selling points for us? None of us old men know how to cook, the taste is indescribable. How about you help us cook? The food and safety along the way are all covered by the caravan, don't you think so? Quickly resolving the last sip of soup, Ziyu wiped her mouth and shook her head, saying. Steward Wang, let me cook for 1 or 2 people. If there are too many, I won't be able to control the temperature well, maybe it will be even worse. Besides, there's a small one that can't be separated from people. The preparation of soup is very simple. You can buy your own ingredients and cook as much as you want, and it's also very convenient to go out. Ziyu scraped out a bit of plant ash and rubbed the bowl, then washed it with hot water from the pot. The cooking of meat jelly is very simple. I use big bones, chicken, and pig feet, and if you want it to be oily, add more meat skin. After removing the blood foam, add onion ginger baijiu and boil it, stew it over low heat until the meat is soft and rotten, and then freeze it overnight. Steward Wang was afraid that he might not remember, so he repeated it twice to Ziyu to confirm its accuracy before bowing his hand and thanking him. Little brother, remember your love, don't call me Wang steward, just call me Wang brother. If you need someone to help drive the car, just say it's not easy for you to take care of a child alone. When you set off tomorrow morning, walk in the middle and I will have Xiao Wu arrange it for you. If you have any questions, just ask him directly. Ziyu didn't expect a simple meat jelly, and with this treatment, she can be considered infiltrating the inside. Thank you very much, Brother Wang, for taking care of me. The rustling snow fell on the body and quickly melted away. The caravan members gradually entered the tent to rest, while 4 night watchmen guarded the fire. Add water and firewood again, throw the remaining eggs in and boil them. Take the night pot from the car and take Xiao Luo to the dark place to pour water. When I returned, I saw that the water in the pot had already boiled. I scooped out half a spoonful of water and poured it into a dedicated small foot wash basin, wiping Xiao Luo's face and feet. After tidying up the little brat and putting it into the carriage to cover it, Ziyu finally had time to tidy up the outside. Opening up the rain shed in front and covering the mule with an old blanket to keep warm, this series of people on duty laughed. After Ziyu tidied up, the eggs in the pot were also cooked, and the remaining water naturally became water for washing face and feet. Ziyu took out 2 small copper stoves and buried 2 pieces of charcoal in a charcoal fire. She added half a pot of water to the pot with leftover heat. After tidying up the scattered things, Ziyu casually picked up eggs and a small stove on the mule cart, glancing at an unseen carriage. The howling north wind mixed with snow particles, and the rustling of the hunting tarpaulin echoed. After getting on the train, Ziyu disappeared into the carriage holding the sleeping Xiaoluo, and appeared in the carriage at the end of the hour. Before dawn, the group resumed their journey, which was both cold and dull. It had been 10 days since they arrived safely in Higa City. The caravan will stay here for 2 days to purchase specialty products and sell them along the way, and Purple Jade will also need to replenish supplies. At the suggestion of Xiao Wu, Ziyu bought 30 locally produced lamb skins for 1 or 2 silver pieces. A large roll was tied together, and Ziyu bravely shouldered it, causing Xiao Wu to nod straight. The price of local lamb is cheaper than pork, and it is cold and durable. Purple Jade likes to eat lamb, so she bought 2 killed ones in front of Xiao Wu. I won't let go of my favorite lamb offal, but it was given away as a dirty item by the boss. Ziyu looked at a large basin of unwashed lamb offal, her head instantly swollen like a bucket. This thing is delicious but not easy to wash. Ha ha ha, these things are all fed to dogs, who would eat that thing? Xiao Wu sneered. Little 5, you'd better not eat then. Ziyu said lightly, causing Little 5 to immediately stop. Little brother, that's just a joke. After 10 days of traveling together, the men in the caravan admired Ziyu. At a young age, they knew more than those who had been running businesses all year round. You are in charge of the meat and lamb offal. Please send them to the inn and ask 2 women to help wash them clean. Have a lamb offal soup pot tonight. Xiao Wu shuddered, but didn't dare to refuse. In the cold weather, he brought a lamb soup pot to ensure warmth. He knows well that not everyone can enjoy the dishes cooked by his little brother himself. Ziyu rented a donkey cart and watched as Xiao Wu left with his belongings, then led Ziluo back to the lamb stall and whispered in a low voice. Boss, I need 100 slaughtered sheep tomorrow morning, and the sheep offal needs to be cleaned thoroughly. How much do you say? The lamb vendor didn't believe his ears, so he dug and looked at the gloomy sky, but the sun didn't come out. 100 pieces, trading here at the beginning of the hour, can we do it? Deal, pay a deposit of 10 taels first. 5 liang. After counting out 5 silver barley seeds, Ziyu received a receipt written by the lamb vendor. The crooked characters were hard to recognize without any discerning ability. Because she wanted someone to clean the lamb offal, Ziyu didn't suppress the price of lamb meat. In her eyes, 15 won per kilogram of meat was already very cheap. After circling around, she couldn't find the beef she wanted to buy. Ziyu was well aware of the important position of plowing cattle in this dynasty and could only express her deep regret. Returning to the inn, I saw that the lamb offal had not been cleaned yet. Ziyu instructed the woman who had been invited to clean it again twice before I was satisfied. The woman was wearing patched clothes, her thin cotton jacket clumped together and couldn't resist the chill. Her hands were even red from the cold. Shaking and trembling, she bent down, her gaze timidly holding onto her collar, and lowered her eyebrows to look at Ziyu. Ding ding dang dang. 20 copper plates containing 2 deformed silver beans fell into the woman's collar. Hurry up. Ziyu said disdainfully. Thank you, young master. The woman cleverly hid the silver beans in her sleeve and held a copper plate to express her gratitude. That night, a unique aroma of lamb wafted from the inn kitchen, causing some people to be moved by it. Fat but not pungent, with a lingering aroma upon entry, paired with specially made dipping sauce, 1 large basin per table is not enough to grab. The milky white soup boiled on a charcoal fire, cooked with radish and cabbage, is also a rare delicacy. Little brother, it's a pity that you don't have the skills to open a tavern. The well-fed steward Wang praised sincerely. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Difficulty in traveling is not bad for mouth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Lamb skin. Making it for oneself to eat and making it for others to eat are completely two different feelings. I still prefer a simpler life. And there is no secret to cooking, as it will be imitated over time. If business is good, it will be suppressed, and if business is bad, it can't even support itself. It's hard work, and hard work opening a shop is not the first choice for Ziyu, who doesn't worry about food and drink. What she wants is to enjoy life, not be enslaved by it. Ha, you really think it through, little brother. Steward Wang smiled and shook his head. Who is not forced by life? Despite his fame and fortune outside, he is not yet someone who works for his master's family. The group of people who were still unsatisfied returned to their houses to rest, and it was rare to stay in one place for a good rest. The next day at midnight, Ziyu, who was sweating profusely, carried 2 fragrant paper bags into the inn and met the Wang steward and his entourage downstairs. Little brother, it's really nice to leave so early. Good morning, brother Wang. Isn't this for exercising? It's also to avoid suffering too much on the way. After Ziyu avoided the group and left, she quickly walked upstairs, unaware that the Wang steward and his group were talking about her. The little brother who looks very gentle, I didn't expect him to be a hard-working and patient kid. If it weren't for the absence of parents, such a person would definitely have a bright future. His family background should be good, and his speech and behavior are not like those of ordinary families. He should have escaped after being taken over by his uncle and aunt. After finishing breakfast, Ziyu started cooking lamb in the open room, using a large stone slab borrowed from the inn to pave the ground and a rented stove. Each cut mutton weighs 3 jin. Soak it in bleeding water, skim the blood foam in cold water, add onion, ginger, hawthorn and baijiu, boil it and stew it slowly. Ziyu, who was standing in front of the stove, clumsily started sewing. She cut the purchased lamb skin into appropriate sizes and sewed 2 pairs of leg guards, 1 large and 1 small, and a lamb skin apron. Xiaoluo, come and give it a try. Although the stitches are not neat, Ziyu feels good about herself, as long as she keeps warm. Ziluo, who was scribbling on the ground with charcoal, ran over happily and opened her little black hand, looking up at her face. Brother. Don't touch randomly, otherwise you'll spank your butt. Hee hee. The little one who wanted to sneak attack obediently put his hand behind him, and Ziyu had to obediently serve. In no time, the siblings tied up with leg guards and aprons looked the same. Mao faces inward and outward. If his clothes are any more torn, he will be caught begging on the street corner. Huh, little brother, your outfit is too funny for me. The steward Wang, who returned at an unknown time, appeared at the door and was amused by the aprons on the waist of his siblings, causing him to burst into laughter. Ziyu looked up at the light outside, unaware that it was already noon. No wonder this person appeared at the door. Hee hee, isn't it too cold to drive? My legs have been frozen stiff all day. Ugly is a bit ugly, but it doesn't work, it's pretty good. Ziyu, who had made herself a perfect man, dressed like a shepherd except for her face that could still be seen. Steward Wang didn't look at the apron, but instead took a liking to the leg guards of the siblings and asked Ziyu to take them off for him to study. Little brother, this is good. Don't mind if brother imitates it. What's bothering me? It's something I can handle at a glance, but a few cloth straps are very effective when tied together. Ziyu generously took off her leg guard and gave it to Steward Wang. Steward Wang tried on his own calf, but it was a bit too small, but he felt very warm. Excuse me, little brother. I'll bring it to you later, and I'll have someone rush out a batch to the next town to take action. Brother, there's nothing to thank you for. I'll send 2 short sheepskin coats to your siblings later. You can't miss that thing along the way, feel free to use it. 2 sheepskin coats were so white that purple Jade couldn't help but beg for them. The fur in the space was the worst, and the rabbit skin coat was not suitable for wearing. The steward Wang, who had acquired something novel, hurriedly left, while Ziluo, who found it amusing, ran around the room playing. Ziyu began sewing sheepskin mats again. Brother, look at it. Ziluo, who climbed onto the chair at an unknown time, pointed downstairs and shouted loudly. A group of exiled prisoners dressed in prison uniforms, covered in cloaks, slowly moving with shackles and iron chains. The onlookers poured stones and drool on the people, and some even angrily smashed things in their hands. Kill these corrupt officials, kill them. Kill them. The people immediately rose up in anger, and some even rushed forward to slap and spit thick phlegm on the face of the exiled criminal. Scattered, scattered, don't beat people to death. It's not easy for us to communicate. The escorting official promptly spoke up to stop them, and the yamen attendant standing on the side stepped forward to separate them. Brother, were they the ones who killed my parents? Ziluo, with tears in her eyes, clenched her small fist and looked angrily at the group of people. Yes, because we are too weak and powerless. Brother, Xiaoluo wants to become a general and seek revenge for his parents. General, don't think about it. Take care of yourself first. Ziyu doesn't have much intention of defending her country. Since ancient times, there have been several loyal ministers and generals who have come to a good end. Living a good life for themselves is fundamental. Upon hearing the conversation between the brother and sister, the returning steward Wang immediately resolved his doubts and felt a hint of sympathy. Little brother, it's time to go downstairs for dinner. Yesterday, after eating the soup pot cooked by Ziyu himself and taking care of each other along the way, Manager Wang kindly invited him back. Who would have thought of hearing about the hidden family backgrounds of the siblings? There are so many corrupt officials in the world, and they are not the kind of petty people who can fight against them. Here we go. Ziyu, whose face remained unchanged, blocked the stove door and slowly simmered. She led Ziluo out and didn't forget to lock the door. During the meal, Manager Wang chatted with Ziyu about the interesting stories he had encountered, as if speaking unintentionally. The lamb skins in Higu City are well known from afar, but they are no longer suitable in the south. It is best to sell them in Baigu Prefecture, as high-quality ones can produce this quantity. Steward Wang shook his palm, and Ziyu smiled and nodded, bowing and bidding farewell. Brother Wang, thank you for your hospitality. Let's go up first. Because the inn was packed, Steward Wang and his team were not in a hurry to go upstairs to rest. After seeing no one in sight of their siblings, the bustling voices in the lobby resumed. Guessing, boxing, drinking alcohol, chatting and farting, all showcase the true qualities of a man. Steward, we also prepared some lamb and lamb offal according to the instructions of the purple Jade brothers. Not to mention the sheep offal that is looked down upon by others, it is so delicious, but it is not easy to wash and can freeze to death. Baojiu, who is in charge of the food for the caravan, learned a few big pot dishes from Ziyu and believes that he has the skills of a chef. He doesn't feel tired every time he buries a pot to cook. Brother Ziyu is a good eater and also a child with a difficult fate. Take care of him more on the way, said Steward Wang, looking at the table of people. Don't worry. Little brother is a straightforward person, we can't be cowardly either, Baojiu patted his chest and said. End of this chapter.